Bougie Sports Podcast. I'm Yvette, your host, and as always, I am so happy that you are here today. It is such a big day for me at Bougie Sports. Everybody knows how much I love my hometown of Youngstown, Ohio, and we are going to talk to the legend, the icon of Youngstown, Ohio, himself, Ray Boom Boom Mancini. Bring him on.
Hello, Yvette. How are you? How you doing?
I'm so good. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here today. It means so much to me. I really
My pleasure. I'm honored.
Only like you said, the fact that you're a boxer, I know is a big deal to everybody, but the biggest thing to me is that you're from my hometown of Youngstown. And to see someone succeed and have the success that you've had from our little town, which, means so much more than other people may know. It's very flattering for me, and I feel blessed to have you today. So I'm so excited.
Thank you. That's very nice of you. Thank you. In Youngstown, we have many success stories from Youngstown, from entertainment to music to arts and to business. It's a wonderful town, and people don't realize all the success stories that we have. Look, the Warner Brothers, born and raised in Youngstown, right?
Yeah.
The father of the strip mall, the Barlow family, Youngstown. Ed O'Neill, star of television and screen from Youngstown.
It's crazy. And Youngstown is just like one of those towns where, what's so funny is that just recently I came across the podcast Cricket City. I don't want to get biased, but this was just 2 years ago that I came across the podcast. And, I became even more obsessed with the history of Youngstown because there's so much more. There's so many layers of Youngstown.
Yeah, it's a good way to put it.
Yeah, so we were talking earlier. We're both from the South Side.
Right. Yeah. What I tell you, what's our saying? You're from the South Side, you're from the outside.
Exactly. So funny. I went to Wilson High School. You went to Mooney, right?
I went to Cardinal Mooney, yes.
I went to Wilson. Do you remember Wilson?
Right. Well,
yeah.
That's my whole neighborhood went to Wilson. I would have went to Wilson. My brother went to Wilson. So it was either Wilson or Cardinal Mooney. But my parents wanted me to go to, Cardinal Mooney. And yeah, so that's what I did.
Exactly. Speaking of your parents, you were born, your mom is Irish, correct? Your dad is Italian?
My mother's Irish. My father's Sicilian.
And then you're the youngest of three, correct?
Youngest of three, right?
Growing up on the south side of Youngstown, we talked a little bit about some of the landmarks that were close to there. And I remember Margie's Pizza being the best pepperoni rolls. Those things were so huge.
Margie's Pizza. Yeah, Margie's was there forever. Margie's has been around forever since I was a kid, And you're just a baby, so yeah. So they had a lot of longevity, that's for sure.
Oh yeah, it did. I actually have some things that I want to show you, some Youngstown landmarks. Starting with, I think the first thing that we were talking about earlier, here, growing up in Youngstown. Schwabel's Bakery, the best smell in the world. I don't care. You go down Midlothian, 224, you smell Schwabel's.
Well, I grew up 3 streets from there, and you smelled it you knew when they were baking. Everyone knew when they were baking from that part of town, and man, it was great. Yeah, that's that was wonderful. That was when Schwabel's was big.
Rink close to that.
Pardon me?
Didn't you guys have a skating rink or a roller rink?
Right next door. Right next door. The funny story. The Boardman Ruin. We called the Boardman Ruin. on that side of town, on the other side of the street. But Schwab was down over it. There's no more of the skating rink. It's the Schwab warehouse, which was literally next door. Now Schwab took it over as their warehouse. Yeah. That's a good thing.
But I have a family that lives in Camel, and I was dropping my daughter off, last week, and I went past Midlothian, and that smell is still there. It just resonates, to my childhood. Like I just remember that, and I think there was there a bakery like Richard's Bakery or something?
Oh no, it was down the street on Shirley Road. It was Palacus Bakery.
Yes. I remember.
I remember right down the street.
Yeah. So something else that we talked about was, I think it's coming up next, is Pemberton Park.
Well, that's where I grew up, right up the street from Pemberton Park. Right up the street. Pemberton Park. I played baseball there. Now that view is from the entrance on Shady Run Road.
Yeah.
And the other side was Zedeker, and I grew up between Zedeker and Homestead on Cambridge.
Okay, yeah. I grew up.
That was 2 streets, just second, 2 streets from there.
Yeah.
And
5 streets down on Florida Street.
Yeah, and right across the street there was a candy store. Dime when we were growing up. Penny, nickel, dime, whatever candies. Right across the street from there. And when I played baseball there, went between 16 and 18. We used to go across the street, get our water, our gum, whatever you want, and walk across the street. Yeah, so it was the candy store. I can't think of the name of this candy store right now, but it was there forever. So there's so many, like you said, landmarks from my childhood. When I see those pictures, it just brings me back to memory recall.
Yes. What about? Let's see what I have here next. I think I have another picture of
Yeah, just walk right down the street. Walk down the street. You can see it from the house. You actually can see walk down the street between the houses and go to the pool. Yeah, that was.
I remember there was a locker, like the females went and males. Remember there was two sides.
Exactly. Walked in. One side was the female, one side was the male. That's right.
Yeah. What else do we have?
Now it's a soccer field.
I think this is Pemberton from up
high. Oh, yeah. Bird's eye view.
Oh,
that was great. Yeah, man. Let me tell you, when I was 18, Idora Park that was one of the greatest spots, one of the greatest amusement parks in the country at that time. We were one of the biggest and best in the country. And that was heartbreaking when that closed out. Because again, I'm sorry?
Did you guys link?
One more time.
It's called the Spring Fling at Idora Park, where they brought bands.
Oh, Idora Park. Yeah. What was that? The Jackrabbit, the Wildcat, the Twirl-a-Roar. Oh yeah, and then you go down. What was that? Cape Man's Cove. What's the word with the boats? You go down the boats. The lazy river boats. But it was great. That was the best time of my life. Yeah.
I couldn't imagine having that. Idora Park wasn't there. I was there as a baby, I think, but it wasn't there when I was growing up. I couldn't imagine having an amusement park right there in Mill Creek Park so close. We used to get a lake.
You have to understand, Idora Park was there forever. In fact, for the 20s and 30s, because my father, when he first turned professional in 1937, he fought professionally at Idora Park, the ballroom. And if you remember, the ballroom used to be a lot of big bands, the big band era, in the 30s and 40s and 50s. So a lot of big bands, even up to the 80s, when I was still fighting, a lot of big bands would come there. A lot of musicians that would play the Idora Park. So that was not only for entertainment because of the amusement park, but they had the ballroom, which had a lot of big bands through the years, from big band sound to local rock guys, to some big name rock groups used to come through and play at Idora Park. Yeah, it was something.
Yeah. What else do we have? I think I've never seen Mill Creek Park.
Well, there you go. I think that's the Jackrabbit or the Wildcat. Well, I think that's the Jackrabbit. I think. I don't know. But the Wildcat, the Jackrabbit was a little slower, more for the kids. And the Wildcat was a faster one as you got into be a teenage years, of course. But yeah, man, that was something. That's something.
And then right here, the staple bridge. If anyone, there's so many people that when I remember I was telling you about how I asked what reminds you of Youngstown, not many people said Mill Creek Park, and Mill Creek Park is one of the most beautiful parks. I don't think people understand how beautiful it is.
Well, Mill Creek Park is actually bigger than Central Park in New York.
Square miles.
Is? Well, yeah, square miles, it is. And that's why, about 20 years ago, they would come in every year to do the International Peace Race. Remember, they used to do a marathon, International Peace Race. They come from all over the world to run through Mill Creek Park. Yeah. So so Mill Creek Park is one of the most beautiful natural parks in the country. Yeah. It's a landmark.
It really is. Like Lanterman's Mill, and my parents got married. I think everybody's parents got married and took their pictures of the Rose Garden, right?
What I'm talking about? The Rose Garden, right? The Rose Garden. That's right.
Yeah. So yeah, there it is. There's Lanterman's Mill right there.
Lanterman's Mill, right? Lanterman's Mill. Yeah.
It's a beautiful thing. I don't know if there's any other pictures. Did I put any of those?
There's my. So there it is. There it is. That's it.
Yes.
Yeah, Carter Mooney. Carter Mooney was from the 50s, late 50s it started. I think that was the first year, was 1958. 57, 58 was the first year.
Now, my younger brother went to Muni. I went to all Youngstown City schools. He went to St. Matthias, and then he went to Muni.
Yeah.
So, I could have went to Muni, but I didn't want to. I went to the next school that's showing.
You know why? Because you don't like to wear that. You don't want to have to wear a uniform. That's all.
No. Youngston. That's where Ed O'Neill went. There's two big Catholic schools in Youngstown, and they're Mooney and Ursuline, right?
That's right. That's what one's on the north side, Ursuline on the north side, Mooney on the south side.
Yeah. So that is that one. And then I went to Youngstown City School. I went to Wilson, so soon. And then in the house, 0-10, never again. That's our statement, right? 0-10, never again, because we suck.
My brother went to Wilson because he wasn't going to, he got kicked out of grades. He got kicked out of St. Tom's in 7th grade. So he had to finish 8th grade year at St. Matthias. And he said, that's it. I'm not going to no more Catholic schools. So me and my sister, my older sister, went to Mooney, but he went to Wilson.
Yeah. Do I have anything else under this? Let's see. Okay, yeah. Let's talk about here because I think this is for anyone from Youngstown. This was a big, huge turn in the history of Youngstown when the steel mills closed. And did you ever? I know you wanted to be a boxer. Did you ever think that maybe you could get into the steel mills when you were younger before they closed, or was this?
Yvette, that's what I tell people. See, when you grow up, my brother, like I said, I graduated. I was in the center, grew up in the 70s, but at that time, I already knew from day one. Since a little boy, I was going to New York. I wanted to go to New York, be a fighter. I wanted to be my father. He was everything I wanted to be as a man, as a husband, as a father, and of course as a fighter. So I knew I was going to New York. But at that time in the 70s, they didn't say worry about college or anything because it said graduate, get a job in a steel mill, meet a nice girl, get married, raise a family. Beautiful life, beautiful life. It's just I wanted something different. So I wasn't going to go to steel mill either way because my mind, I was already leaving, turn pro. My brother worked at steel mills when he was in high school. He was in high school and he worked the summer shift. How about this? My brother made more money in 3 months during the summer than my father. My father worked at GF, General Fireproof, on the north side. My brother made more money at the steel mills in 3 months than my father did all year. So not saying how the jobs were, so there's plentiful. There's so many jobs available. You get paid well, and so they didn't. What I'm getting to, they didn't advocate going to school, go to college, get that education, graduate, go to the steel mill, always have a job, get a nice pension, you have a good home, beautiful home, 2 cars that you drive. It's a great life. Just wanted something different. And that's why my whole neighborhood was mill rats. Which is an affectionate name. People think it's not a derogatory name. My whole neighborhood was mill rats. And I just, if I didn't want to be a fighter, if I didn't have a dream of being a fighter or something, I'd have been working at the mill too. Mm-hmm. Except in 1977, is when Black Monday happened, right? Mm-hmm. Nobody knew September 18, 1977. There was no advance, and no one had any advanced knowledge that the steel mills were going to shut down. They shut down one day. And of course, you're too young to remember. I remember very well. Over one day, over 10,000 men lost their jobs. In 1 month, over 20,000 men. In 6 months, over 50,000 men lost their jobs. That decimated our town. To this day, we still haven't fully recovered. Now we're on the climb again. We're on the climb doing different things with the think tank downtown and technology. The technology center downtown. YSU is now one of the best business schools to go to. They come from all over the world to go to our business school. But we had to reinvent ourselves, and we've done that. But we still have not fully recovered from the steel mill shutting down, and that's almost 40 years ago. Over 40 years ago. Over 40 years.
Yeah, I mean that whole story hit so home to me because, like I was telling you earlier, I really don't remember like the closing of the steel mills and anything like that. My mom just passed away last year, and she's on the same age as you. And I think with that, it's just going. I fell in love with my history of Youngstown and finding out about what it is, and then I went to Briar Hill, and I went to the old the steel mills, and I literally sat there and I cried because I was thinking about everything, and I thought, wow, if you really knew if you really can understand the impact of those steel mills closing.
Yes.
I honestly didn't write it so recently because it was I didn't care.
So your baby, your generation is probably your generation. Even my children now, who were in the 30s, they didn't grow up here. We grew up out west. But what I'm saying, even people in the 30s, they're first generation. Your generation is the first generation completely removed from the steel mills. Meaning, you've heard of it, but you have no recollection of it. See, growing up, back then, everyone's had a father, grandfather, great-grand, uncle. Everyone had somebody worked at the steel mill. The generation now, your generation, the first totally removed. You might have a father, or grandfather, but you don't remember the steel mills, and it's unfortunate. But it's in a way it's good because the town's reinvented itself. You have to. It's like as a person, right? I was a fighter. When I retired, I didn't say reinvent myself. I just evolved. You evolved into something else. I had other dreams, other goals, other aspirations. So you evolve. The town has evolved, and we had to, because there's, you're going to die. It's simple as that.
Yes, it's crazy because, you're exactly right. When I was growing up, and I feel sad about saying this, I just feel like Youngstown was a dump, it was just a dump, because I didn't see the good part of Youngstown. It was thriving, but when you go back and you realize and you understand why and what happened and how traffic is still the steel mills closing, when you said that was really a great living for people. Yes. It was a wonderful way to live and then just not be taken away from everyone. And if you didn't want to be a fighter and you wanted to do something like that, or other people did not,
Well, you've had during that time. As I said, again, we were brought up to be, and that's not a bad thing. I'm just saying, you get a job, graduate, get a job in a mill. They didn't advocate being an actor, being a singer, being some type of artist of any, the arts, or be an athlete. Okay, yeah, but to be a fighter, you out of your mind. You're crazy. You can't, I heard of that all. Being a baseball player, football player, yeah, great, But the arts, that wasn't anything. So if anybody wanted to be an actor or a musician, what are you, crazy? So that's why guys you had to leave. Like me, I had to leave. My father told me, if you stay here, Raymond, you stay here, you're going to starve. I starved. My father turned pro in 1937. He stayed 2 years around Youngstown fighting Northeast Ohio. But he starved. That's why 39 he went to New York. And that's when his career took off. And he became the number one contender and all that. And I said, as I said earlier, I wanted to be my father. So I was going to do the same thing he did. But I knew I was leaving. I knew I was going. So even as a boy, from day one, I knew I wanted to be a fighter. And one day I'd go to New York, But so it did. I mean, people say, when I got some success and after I became champion, they'd say to me, reporters would say to me, if you weren't a fighter, what would you have done? I said, I can't answer that. I can't answer because there's nothing else I ever wanted to be. I like to think I'd have been successful. I like to think I'd have been successful, whatever I chose, but there's nothing else I wanted to be. So, I wasn't going to work in a steel mill. I wasn't doing that. That was a no can do.
You made that decision before they closed.
Oh, before they closed. Oh, no, I told you, as a little boy, I knew that long before. Like I said, from day one, I knew I was going to New York. And so, but I tell people, I wanted something different. Those men were better men than me. They're better men than me. They had to do the grind every day. And that's why I say, you want a tough guy? No, they're the tough guys because they had to do that grind every day. My father was doing that. I used to sit there. When I was an amateur, my father would wake me up, give me a kiss before I go to work. He'd go to work at 6 in the morning. And I'd get up and do road work before school started. So I get up and run around Pemberton Park and everything. But I go to my window. We live 2 houses from the corner from Homestead. And I sit there watch him walk up to catch his ride. Blizzard, snow, torrential rain, scorching heat. And I'd say to God, please help me to make it as a fighter. Please, I can't do that. I can't do that. And again, no knock on my father, no knock on the men of that generation.
Right.
Better men than me. I just wanted something different. I wanted different.
You know what I love that you said about your father, like after he got hurt, he couldn't continue to fight anymore. He said he didn't complain and he didn't make that a big deal that he couldn't do it anymore, Yeah. After he wasn't able to fight, you said.
Yeah.
And
no. My father, as you know, most people know, but I'll reiterate for those who don't. My father was a fighter. He was the number one contender in the world from 1942 to 1944. He signed to fight for the world title in February of 42. He got drafted in January of 42. He said, "Look, I want to defend my country. I just want the chance to fight for the world title, and I'll give all my money to the Army Relief Fund, his entire purse." And they said, "We don't want your money. We want you." So he went in and it became a frontline infantryman. The frontline infantryman is you and enemy, nobody in between. And he was in the battle for about 8 months. So in the Battle of Metz in November 1942, he got hit with a mortar shell bomb. And other than the Battle of the Balls, the Battle of Metz was the most destructive war in the European theater of operation. And he was left for dead. And thank God, one of his comrades heard him moaning. And the guy put him over his shoulder and took him back to camp. And so my father was in a hospital in England for 13 months. He had so much shrapnel throughout his body. They said, first of all, he was bleeding, so he bled out so much. They said he'll never live. He lost so much blood. But he got through that. They said he'll never walk because he had so much shrapnel throughout his body, especially around his spine. Eventually, he got through that. He said, surely he'll never fight again. But eventually, he came back to fight. But he went into the number one lightweight contender, and he came out a middleweight. It's a whole different, 135 pounds, 160 pounds. It's a whole different thing. And he was a shell of what he once was. He still fought a lot of good names, big names, but he never got that title shot. And when he retired in 1947, he met my mother in New York. My mother was born in Jersey, raised in the city. So he met my mother in New York.
New York.
Yeah. And so that's where he met my mother. They met in married 54 years. You can't make this. They met in July. My father's birthday. They met and they eloped to get married in January 12th. They got married in 1948. 6 months, married for 4 years. There's people who don't last 6 weeks. But can you imagine? And my mother had a Mensa. My mother had a Mensa brain. My mother was part of, her IQ was off the charts. She was part of Mensa. Where my father had a third grade education. My mother was very. My mother way before her time. And my father was a guy who grew up in depression. Struggle. He was a street guy. He didn't have an education. He was a street guy. So he had to work for everything he did. So it was a combination. It was a beautiful combination. But sometimes it could. I guess my mother wanted to take shots. My mother wanted to try things business-wise. My father was like, no, we can't, because everything they made, they used to keep in this mattress. They put in the mattress. So I think I always said, I got my father was my inspiration, obviously, but my mother was my motivation. My mother made me believe I was 10 foot tall. My mother told me you could be whatever you want to be in this world. She said, Raymond, the only limitations you have are those you put on yourself. So she helped me be a dreamer. And I was a dreamer, and she pushed that. Because if I wasn't, I never would have thought of dreaming of being a fighter, dreaming of being a world champion. So you got to vision that, right? And that's from day one. So later on, when I won the title, one of the reporters said to me, now that you won the world title, did you really think it was going to actually happen? I said, yeah, man. Yeah, because I actually dreamt about it. I used to have these dreams since I was a little boy. I used to dream walking with the belt over my head, having my hands held up. I said, I used to have these dreams. I said, now, sports psychologists have a fancy name. It's called positive mental visualization, right? If you can dream it, if you could dream it, you could be it. I said, hell, I was just called it having a dream. Being a dreamer, having a dream, and following that dream. People don't understand. I was telling you, dreams without action are dead.
Yeah.
I tell you, I want to be a singer. What are you doing to do that? You're going to school to be a singer? You're taking courses? Well, no. Are you trying to get touch with an agent? Well, no. What are you doing? Well, I just thought I'd get discovered. That ain't how it happened. So that's what I'm saying. People are saying dreams without action are dead. You have to take the initiative. You have to take the steps to reach that dream. And I did. I went to New York.
And is that September 18th, 1979, when you moved to New York?
Yes.
So what was like the biggest cultural shock coming from Youngstown
to New York City? Well, I thought I was a hip kid. I thought I was a street kid. I thought I had it going on. I'll tell you when I realized that, when Times Square Gym is where I trained. Corner 42nd Avenue and Broadway. Heart of the theater district, right? But you have the most everything and anything in the world. The best of everything and the worst of everything in that small 2-mile radius, 2-block radius. So when I used to get off the subway and see a man standing there urinating all over the thing, and people walking by like it's nothing, I said, oh, hell. And then we go, and then there's a guy in the subway with his pants down defecating, and people walking by like it's, I said, oh, man, this is a whole different vibe, man. This is on a whole different level. That's when I realized, I ain't as hip as I thought it was. This is real life. And that's when I, that was the reality check for me. The people that it was heartbreaking to see, but it was life. That was life. That's life in a big city.
Yeah. And like what I also love is that I just feel like just one of the characteristics for people coming from Youngstown is that tenacity, and
yes.
I feel like that you definitely have that, and I don't know why, like it just feels like there's always you face like a tragedy. You face a tragedy in your life. I know you lost your brother shortly after you went to New York. And it just like for me, it just seems like the same story that I hear from everybody from Youngstown. I don't know why. I just feel like we all like face a lot of obstacles, and it's how you go over through those obstacles. You did not let that bother you. I mean, you kept going after that, which that had to be hard.
Well, yes. Look, whatever people come in their life, like first thing I talk about Youngstown, one thing I was talking about, Youngstown's about faith, family, and friends. That's what Youngstown's about. Growing up in what parochial school, 12 years, right? But being a fighter, I tell people, look, you got to get a connection with Christ. You got to get a connection with God. You got to have Jesus Christ in your life as your Lord and Savior. And if you don't, people, I preach this to my kids, and I say, look, I love you. You're my baby. I've taught you. But you're going to do what you're going to do. But I'm going to tell you, every time when things are going to happen, what's the first thing people say? Oh God! Oh, wait a minute. Why are you going? Oh God! Why? If you don't trust God, if you don't go to church, praise God. If you don't go to renew your relationship with God, why you say, oh God? Well, it's just the same. Oh no, that's okay. It's fine. Well, let me tell you something. I tell people. For me, my faith was everything to me. It still is. My faith is everything. It helped make me the man I am, but it helped me to get through the worst times of my life. And I used to, when I used to say, "Oh God, please help me." I mean, that's God's truth. I used to pray every night. Help me to make it. Help me to get there. But again, if I didn't take the initiative, if I didn't do my part, it ain't gonna happen. And that's the one thing I learned. Good friend of mine, Father O'Neill, who was a teacher of me at Cardinal Mooney. Then he went to all my fights. He was one of my dearest friends. He was the only one other than my father allowed in the dress room to see me. And he'd always say a blessing over me before every fight. And he'd say a blessing. And it was just wonderful. But he used to say to me, so I used to say to him, Father, you say a blessing over me. Do you ever ask God to help me win? He goes, no. I said, what? He said, no. I said, why not? I said, can't you just throw me a bone, man? Just throw me a bone. He said, how can I ask God to help you to win? He said, I asked God. I said, what did you pray over me? He said, I prayed to keep you and your opponent safe. I prayed that you would fight like you train. And I said, it would give you the strength and ability to do the very best you can. He said, if you train like you're supposed to, you had everything to win already. How can I ask God to help you win if you didn't do your part? If you didn't train the way, so if you already did it, I didn't have to ask God to help you win, help you to win, let you win. You already had that.
Yeah.
I said, man, I think this is something. So if you didn't do your end, how can I ask God to help you? He said, I can't do that. So I think in reality, that's what we're talking about people in life. Well, how can people say, I want to be an actor, I want to be a dancer, I want to be a fighter or a football player? If you ain't paying the dues, you got to do the grind. Life's about doing the grind, paying the dues. But along with that, you got to have a connection. You have to have the connection of faith with Christ to guide you along the way, to give you the strength along the way. Because we're weak people, weak-minded people. So we got to pray for strength of mind. We got to pray for strength of body, mind, and spirit. So I'm going to get off my pulpit now. I'm going to get off my pulpit.
Yeah. No, I love that. It's you're right. You have to work for what you have. It's like even with this little podcast that I started, like you said, like I wanted to be like, I want to do a podcast. I like sports. I'm going to do this. I'm going to do this in Youngstown. I'm going to get Ray Boom Boom Mancini, and I got it. And I'm look where I'm at right today. And it doesn't matter what scale that it is. And I feel like
you're doing it.
Especially when I have this slide. I don't know what happened to it. Of your some old videos, because I found this old picture of you and Frank Sinatra, and I was dying because I know that he was a fan of you, and of course, absolutely, I love Frank Sinatra so much. And can you tell me a little bit about? Tell me a little bit. I would never ever talk to someone in my life that's met Frank Sinatra. So I
was very fortunate to meet him before one of my fights in Las Vegas. He was performing at Caesar's Palace. I was fighting there. So I met him 2 days before the fight, and he brought me back, and he said, he said, hey, kid, Said, you make us proud. You're making us proud. Us Italians proud. I said, oh, thank you. I said, well, Mr. Sinatra, you're the guy who, one of our heroes. You're one of my heroes. And he said, so they took the pictures. We took the pictures together. He says, I'm going to be at your fight. I said, oh, wow, great. He said, I'm looking forward to seeing you afterwards. So afterwards, he said, he invited me to the show that night after the fight. And so he did the show. And then I went to, and I went to I came to the fight. And after the fight, I went to the show and he introduced me in the audience, which I was flabbergasted because one thing about Frank Sinatra, he doesn't do interviews. I mean, he don't introduce anybody. He doesn't do that. And so I was so honored that he did. And then through the years, I run into him on different occasions for Italian American events, especially at the National Italian American Sports Hall of Fame. I'm part of that. He would come and he would help us out by doing it, to do a performance. So he was wonderful, and he was great. And last time I saw him, like I said, it was very gracious. I saw him in Pittsburgh. He was doing a show in Pittsburgh. I went backstage, but my wife at the time, when we were living in California, met him in a restaurant. Well, she was at a restaurant with a friend of hers, and they were having lunch. And she said, and Frank Sinatra and his family came, and they were sitting at the next table. And her friend said, "Oh, well," she goes, "why don't you tell him that who your husband is?" She goes, "I'm not going to do that." So her friend was very, I'll do it. So she goes up. She goes, "Mr. Sinatra, my girlfriend's husband is a friend of yours." He said, "Oh yeah." He says, "Oh, who's that?" She says, "Oh, Ray Mancini." "Oh, your husband's I love you." He was very gracious. He was very gracious, and that meant the world. When she came over, that meant the world to me. So I've always had such admiration for him, not only as a performer, but the cultural icon that is, but what he means for Italo-Americans like myself. That you come. We're all immigrants in this country. From your family, we're all children of immigrants, whether it's your father, first generation, second generation, whatever. But whatever your background, you can be whatever you want in this life if you're willing to pay the dues and go after it. And I was always inspired by him. And it was wonderful to get a chance to know him and meet him and become friends with him. So, I say friends, but yeah.
I mean, that's pretty. I mean, we're talking about Frank Sinatra here. And we're going to talk about, since you mentioned some of your friends here, I want to talk a little bit about some of other friends from our hometown.
I don't know. Well, it's funny. Yvette, when we were trying to get on, we were on starting. I said, I don't know if you heard me say, I said, as we were trying to get on, Ed O'Neill just called me. So he called me. He calls me. We talk about 3-4 times a week, and he calls me in the morning when he gets there having this cup of coffee. And we laugh. And he truly is the one of the, if not the funniest, without trying to be funny. He's the best storyteller there is. People don't know Eddie has a photographic memory. He remembers things like from the 60s. Don't ever bet against him. He remembers like it was yesterday. And he knows names. And he does impressions. He does voices. The guys from Youngstown. It's the best. Eddie, I tell you. So, you laugh like crazy. I'm trying to get him to Youngstown to come and maybe do I just had for my foundation, I had Gianni Russo in town. I'm trying to get Eddie to come and do for my speaker series. I had Michael Francis last year, Gianni Russo. I'm trying to get Eddie to come, and he said, "Let me get. Yeah, I'd love to help you come do it." He said, "We got to figure a time I can come back." So I'm hoping we can get him back, within the next year to do a sit down, talk about his career, his life. Believe me, it'll be the all-time best show anybody's ever saw. You'll be laughing your ass off. Funny. And Eddie's a real
how tough Ed O'Neill was. I don't think people realize that he was a tough guy. Didn't he have Did he know karate or ninjutsu or
jiu-jitsu? Eddie's a second-degree black belt in jiu-jitsu. He took it with the Gracie, Jorge Gracie. He took it with the original family who brought it to America. Eddie, people always said, who's the toughest guy in Hollywood? I said, Ed O'Neill. Ed O'Neill, Al Bundy? I said, let me tell you, Al Bundy will whip your ass. Don't let nobody catch you. Don't take it. Ed O'Neill, first of all, Eddie's, he's a big guy. He's about 6'3", he's about 240. We know he played football. He made the last cut of the last cut of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He made the last cut, but that's what got him into acting, right? So when he got his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, he said, I guess he was thinking his family. He said, well, I guess I should thank Chuck Noll too, because if you don't cut me, I don't go into acting. But people don't know. Oh yeah, Eddie's the real deal. So he's the best. And I see here you got Mark Stoops and
yes, I got the Stoops brothers here.
I grew up.
We're Youngstown people.
I grew up the next street over, about eight houses up. I went to school with all of them. Mark was the youngest one. He was like, "Hey kids, get away from me! You're bothering us." Bobby's a year older. Michael's a year younger. So we used to go there. Our parents, his parents, back then would take us to school, pick us up, and so we went to St. Dom's. Me and Bobby were the starting point guards of basketball team. We went undefeated. Then the next year, me and Michael were the starting point guards, and we got beat in the championship. Went to Mooney. Played ball. I played pop water football, fighting Little Redmond. Played with Bobby and Michael, and their father was my baseball coach at Mooney, and I love that man. Just a wonderful, wonderful family. Just wonderful people. Great guys. And
they're from the South Side too. I didn't know.
Down the street, like I said, that's it over, man. So yeah, right close to where you live, close to where you're from the South Side.
But Ed wasn't from the South Side, was he? He's from the North Side, wasn't he? Was Ed O'Neill?
Ed O'Neill. Eddie was from the North Side. Yes, Eddie was from the North Side. But you're from the South Side. You're from the South Side.
What do you think about Jim Trafficking? Let's talk about Jim Trafficking.
Jimbo. I love Jimbo.
Yes.
Oh, you can't make him up. They'd have to go to Central Casting in Hollywood to find somebody to portray Jimbo. He was an original. I love Jimbo. He was good for the town.
Yes.
He was good for the town. He loved Youngstown. He was good for the town and made his mark. There he is. Jim Tressler. Jim, he's a wonderful guy, great coach, great speaker, great motivator. He's just like wonderful. He wasn't born here though. He coached here. People don't think he was actually. He was born in Ohio, but not from Youngstown. But he coached here. But I tell a story real fast. I tell a story. I did a speaking engagement one time, and I'm speaking. Jim's the main speaker. I'm right for him. So I go up there and I'm telling jokes. I'm cutting it up like I'm Shecky Green or something, right? And I'm getting a few, It wasn't going over real well, right? All of a sudden, Jim walks up. He grabs the podium. He looks at the room and goes, "Team!" People say, "Team!" Everyone, yes, we heard you. Where are you going with this? Team is an acronym. We're together. Everyone achieves more. Team! They give us standing ovation. He didn't do anything. He's just a team.
He said.
I thought I'm doing comedy for 20 minutes. I'm going to
That's awesome.
Yeah, Jim's great. He's wonderful. So next picture has Maurice Claret, right?
Yeah, Maurice Claret is another athlete coming out of, they're more than put him on the Youngstown umbrella.
Yeah, I didn't know Maurice until later. But I went to school with his father, Mike. Mike was a couple years older than me. I played as a sophomore when his father was a senior. And then later on, Mike was a cameraman for WFMJ, 21 News downtown. So when he'd come and interview me all the time. And Mike always called me Raymond. He was one, guys I no longer know me if they were for school. Raymond, how you doing? He was wonderful. I love Mike. And Maurice, great football player. What he accomplished in college was incredible. He had some fallbacks, but you know what he's doing with his life now? God bless him. Kelly.
I grew up with the street from the palace.
Kelly's from the South Side too. I met him when he was 10 years old at Jack Lowe's gym.
Yeah.
I knew his father, Mike. His father, Mike, my brother went to school together. His father, Mike, used to help my mother sell tickets one of my fights when I was on the way up. His father, Mike, would help sell tickets for my fights. He'd help my mother sell tickets. So Kelly's what he did, God bless him. He's a great shit. Hell of a fighter, great champion. What he did for Youngstown was great. Bernie.
Yeah. What about Bernie?
Well, I'm a few years older than Bernie. He was at Borden when I was at Mooney. And I played baseball against Bernie. He was a hell of an athlete too. And if he didn't play football, he could have been a hell of a baseball player. I'm telling you, man, he's a terrific athlete. And he's a wonderful person.
And that's me and you. You met me before. This is back in the day when you had your Good Son premiere at Amazon Auditorium. I came at. This is Aquapazzo.
Yes. That's you. Wait, that's you next to me.
That's me right here. Yeah.
Oh, I knew you looked.
Yes.
We did. At that time, if you remember, it wasn't called Aquapazzo. It was called the Culinary.
Art Center. It was Culinary Art Center.
Right. So Tommy had, when we did the premiere for the documentary, Tommy had the premiere, the dinner for me there. Yeah.
Yeah, I went to that, and I see you just did something that I'm so mad that I didn't know of. I got it because I met Johnny Ciccatelli last year when I told you I was in love with the Crooked City, and I did a podcast with him, and I started talking to him about the mob stuff in Youngstown because I don't know why there's not a movie or a docuseries or something about Youngstown. I mean, people talk about The Sopranos. I just watched that last year, but I feel like Youngstown, the stories in Youngstown, that's a movie. That's something,
Well, let me tell you. I've worked with Nick Pileggi is. Nick Pileggi is the author of, he's the one who wrote Casino. He wrote Goodfellas. But the book was called Wise Guy. But it was but then they just changed it to Goodfella because that was the term in the book, So Nick Pileggi is probably the most premier and Casino. He wrote Casino. He wrote like I said, Goodfellas. He wrote Casino. Nick Pileggi is probably the most prolific writer of organized crime in the country. And so I've become friends with Nick. I met Nick years ago, become friends. And so we've been working on a series about Youngstown. He said, when I approached him about it, he said, "Oh my God, Ray, that's part of the world, that part of the country's never been told. That story's got to be told.
It has to be told."
But we told it, so we have it, and we have a writer who's the writer for it. He was on top for The Wire, for Treme, all the George Pelicano's series on Showtime. His name's Chris Chikaitis. He wrote the pilot script. We had it going, and everybody wanted it. But then there was a period of time that all the streamers wanted it. They were doing all the mob stuff. But then there was so much they pulled back, and they wanted to go more into comedy. So now they're going back into the mob stuff again. So they approached us again, like, "Hey, we want it. How can we?" But answer your question. I've worked on this for the last 5 years ago. We've been talking about doing this a long time. So we're going to get it done. We're going to get it made.
Youngstown. We can bring that to Youngstown. I really feel like it because I myself, after watching Crooked City, I went on my own little tour. I went to go see where Sandy Naples, where I went to go see all those landmarks, like, New Music Station and Camel and all that stuff. And I think there was a tour, and then you got to eat the food, and that was one of my questions that I wanted to ask you. I mean, I know it's hard to answer because we have a lot of good food here, but if you had to choose what's your favorite pizza? If you had to choose.
If I had to choose my favorite restaurant or food?
We'll do restaurant. And then,
my favorite restaurant? Okay, let's go. My favorite restaurant? See, I frequent a lot of them because you got to. But for me, so here's my favorite restaurant, and there's no particular order, but I frequent them all because I love all the food and I love the people there and the atmosphere. You understand? Because it doesn't matter how good the food is, if the atmosphere is nothing. It takes away the dining experience. Or if you go to a place where the food not as good as others, but the ambiance is great, the energy is great, then it's a great experience, right? So for me, no particular order. Mikey Alberini's, Uncle Pazzo, Station Square, Ottavio, Station Square. Okay,
Yeah.
those three, right? Of course, Mark Canzonetta downtown, Casa di Canzonetta was the bistro, now Casa di Canzonetta. So those are the four. But then you go to Homestead out here in Columbiana, Columbiana, the bistro over there on Route 7 and 14 where they meet. But there's a lot of mom and pop joints too. I love La Rocca's in Poland. I love right up the street from my mind's run. Up the street, I'll think on Western Reserve Road. I'll think of it in a minute.
Westgate? Is it Westgate? Westgate on Western Reserve?
No. It's the right next to the bread shop. Right next to the bread shop. I go there.
Right next to where?
The bread chef on Western Reserve Road.
Oh, what is that?
I go there. I eat there about 5 times, 3 or 4 times a week. And my mind's racing right now. So there's so many good ones. But like I said, I love the food here. You can't beat the food here, right?
No, I mean, even if you go outside of even go to Cleveland, go to Canton, right. They don't put French fries in their salads, which I think is so weird. They don't have hot peppers and oil.
I'm not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of French fries in my salad. I'm not a big fan of that. But it's just yeah.
But it's a Youngstown thing. I know, because I watched your interview with Mike Franceschi. Is it Mike Franceschi or Fran Franceschi?
Was probably say Francis. He says Francis.
Mike Francis.
Yeah.
What was we talking about? The interview with Mike Francis. I thought that was a great interview.
Yeah. Well, Michael's terrific. Michael's terrific. Michael is wonderful. He's a wonderful, good friend of mine. I actually met Michael when I was in New York, 1982. Remember 1982, don't you?
Sure enough. Yeah.
You were 1982. You were you born?
Yeah.
You were a baby. And yeah, I met Michael back then. He didn't remember. Then through the years, but then I knew who he was. Then through the years, I didn't run into him. Then in 2000, year 2000, my kids went to the Santa Monica Boys and Girls Club, Billy Ball basketball, and then you get the roster of their team. I see Michael Francis Jr. So I called a friend of mine from New York. He goes, "Oh yeah, man, that's him. He went out there years ago, and he had to leave New York." And I said, "Oh, okay, great." So we first game, I go up and see him. And he remembered me. Oh, and then we lived by each other, and our kids went to school together. And so then I see him quite a bit. We go have lunch together. And he's a wonderful guy. Wonderful guy.
One of the biggest questions that I had, and he asked you, and I got an answer, was, were you ever approached by the mob? Okay, so let me tell you, I went down the rabbit hole, right? I'm so into everything that happened now in the 80s and 90s between the Cleveland and the Pittsburgh mob. And you said and I believe you 1,000,000% no, that they did not bother you. They were just proud of you. And I believe it. They were just protected you probably, and they were proud of you.
Yeah, absolutely. You bet. Yeah. The restaurant I was trying to think of was Carmela's. Carmela's up the street. Anyhow.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, that's my favorite. Hey.
Okay, I know exactly where. Okay, you live right over there. Okay.
No. I always tell a story. No, they never approached me. They were proud of me. I knew everybody. I knew them all. And they never wanted to. We do have drinks after they come to my fights. We'd have drinks together. And because they knew us. I think part of it is when I went to New York. The fact I didn't stick around here. They're proud of that. and they had a lot of respect for my father, so that was kind of hands off. My father, they got a lot of respect for my father. But here's the thing: I tell a story. When I first wanted to turn pro, so I met my manager, eventually became manager, Dave Wolf. My trainer, Murphy Griffith, saw me at the National Golden Glove in March of 1979. After the fight, I lost the fight, but I fought the defending national champion. He came in, he knew one of our trainers. He said, "Young man, what do you want to do?" I said, "Well, I'm turning pro. I'm so disgusted about the amateur because everyone thought I wanted to fight, but I didn't get the decision." And he said, young man, he says, "Let me tell you something. My name is Murphy Griffith. I'm a trainer." He says, "You ain't never going to win no national title, but you could be a hell of a pro, and you can win a world title, and I can help you get there." And he said, "Look, I work with a manager, David Wolf, blah, blah, blah." He said, "Here's my number." I gave him my number. He said, "I'll call you in a week or so. I'm going to let you rest. I'll let you call you in a week, and we'll talk." Okay. So I talked to Dave Wolf, my manager, talked to Murphy Griffith. He got me in touch with Dave Wolf. Dave Wolf would talk to me, tell me, what his vision. I'd have to move to New York. I want to do that anyway, right? I have to sleep on Griff's couch. I have to sleep on his couch. So I have enough money where I get my own apartment. I'd have to take the train down to the Times Square gym. There was a little cafe on the corner of 72nd and Columbus Avenue where I'd eat my breakfast and dinner. He said, I'm not going to give you any. He said, "I'm not going to offer you no money up front. He said, I'm going to float you some money to get to New York, but I'm going to take it out of your first paycheck." He said, "The bottom line is you do your job, I'll do mine. I'll get you a world title." I said, "Great." Now, previous to that, there were some local guys who wanted to handle me. So we went to a meeting, me and my father, and it was at the captain table up to Ramadi and up on Belmont Avenue years ago, if you remember that, years ago. So I go in there, we go have lunch, and we're sitting down, and they go, "Raymond, they go, we're new to the game. But we want to take you on. We're going to hire a booking agent to get you fights. We're talking to Angelo Dundee, one of the greatest trainers ever, about training you." He says, "We're going to give you $250 a week just to train. We're going to rent you an apartment. We're going to buy you a car." My father says, "We'll take it. We'll take it." I said, "Dad, relax. He come up with depression. Nobody gave him that." I said, "What can you do for my career?" They go, "Well, we're new to the game, Raymond." Okay. So they were, and that's what they were dreaming. So when Dave Wolf told me, he said, "Look, all you want to hear is, I don't want that. I'm not going to, I don't want you to owe me anything. I'm not going to owe you nothing. You're going to owe me nothing." So that's what he said. "I'm going to float you $600 to get you." He said, "But you're going to pay that back on your first purse," which I did. He said, "Because I don't want you to owe me nothing. I don't want to owe you nothing." But when he said, "But you do your job, I'll do mine. I'll get you the world title." That's all I want to hear. That's all you want to hear. I don't want nothing for nothing. I want to earn everything. And I did.
Right.
So that's your question. So was I approached about the? Yeah. At the end of my it was sad, but they never during my career. Never. They came to my fights, like I said. We'd have dinner. We'd have drinks afterwards. I run it when I come back to town. I bounce around different places, different nightclubs. I'd see them, give me a hug, a kiss, but I was hands off, and I always appreciate that. So little good guys. And like I said, I knew them all. They were good friends of mine. Unfortunately, a lot of them are not around anymore, but.
Yeah. And I have to just one more thing, because this is another fascinating thing to me that when I was researching you. Now, when you moved to New York City and you started, there was a little movie called, do you see behind me, Rocky? Yes. And I don't have the picture here anymore, but I've seen a picture of you and Sylvester Stallone. Yeah. And a lot of people compared, that Rocky character to you, and I know that a lot of focus was on the Madison Square Garden fight. You got a lot of attention because of the story about you and your dad, which it is a wonderful story, and I could everything makes sense on how that all happened. Can you just tell me a little bit about, did you meet Sylvester Stallone, and just a little bit about the whole Rocky?
Well, first of all, it was funny because you said a lot of people thought the Rocky story is based on me. I go, that's 1976. I was still in high school. I wasn't even a pro yet. No, it wasn't about me. for every amateur fighter, for every Italo-American person of Italo-American heritage, that Rocky was what at that time. I think it's exactly what America needed, because it was a 200 years. We were America wasn't very wasn't looked at very high on the world stage. That movie came out, and if you look back, the story was a simple story. It wasn't shot. It was made for a shoestring budget. It wasn't shot very well. The acting was okay. The dialogue was okay. But as soon as you heard that story, dun 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 dun, dun Rocky! Oh, everyone's jumping on his feet. It embraced you. That's why that is one of the most iconic movies you can. And even the Rocky 2 was good. Rocky 3 was good. After Rocky 3, it started to get a little bit, but the first 3 were great. But that first one is iconic because of what it meant to me at that time in our life. I was a sophomore in high school. It was everything for me. It was everything. So, yeah. Then, of course, when I was fighting, Sly came here in Youngstown for my first time.
He came to Youngstown?
Well, Warren, Packer. Warren, not Packer, Molotov. July of 1982, when I defended my title at Molotov Stadium. He came, he was at ringside. We got together. And then he invited me to New York when he was shooting the movie. It was a sequel to Saturday Night Fever. It was called Staying Alive. He did the movie called Staying Alive with John Travolta. So they invited me to New York. I went and saw him on stage. That's why the picture you saw, that's the picture when he was on stage. I mean, on set with him. And then, like I said, through the years, when I moved out there to see him, I see him at lunch at a Cafe Roma in Beverly Hills every Saturday. Him and Arnold had their own table. So every Saturday, if you wanted to see him, that's what you knew where they're going to be. Yeah. So I go down occasionally, run to have lunch with these guys, and it was a lot of fun. But Sly he's a great inspiration for a lot of, not only Italian American, but for anybody. A guy who had a dream, wrote this whole movie for himself, had nothing. His career was tanking. His career was going. He wrote the story for himself. He was offered by the studios big money because he was flat broke. And he said, "No, let's not play a role." Well, we don't know who you are. You're not a big enough star. No, until finally took a shot up. He is the embodiment of perseverance. He's the embodiment of ambition, dream, goals. That story, the making of the movie is the movie. The fact that he got it sold, how he got it sold, and the fact that he wouldn't let him at first, if he didn't, to be in the lead role, eventually he did. It's tremendous.
That's how I feel about you, right? That's how you are to me.
Well,
that's what I see for you. And I just want to say thank you so much. I mean, coming from, I just call myself just a kid from Youngstown. I grew up on the south side of Youngstown too, and seeing like your success and other success, it does motivate me and to want to do better. And it also motivates me to want to bring attention to our city, because I know we get a lot of, I think it's changing a little bit. People like sometimes, even myself, when you hear of Youngstown, you think of crime, you think of everything else. But I don't think of that now when I think of Youngstown. I think of the stories about you. I think about the stories about, before the steel mill. And I think you have to understand, the city of Youngstown.
I am truly honored and flattered by those kind words. Honestly, God, Yvette, I'm very flattered. And people say, I just, it's funny. My bride said to me, we talked about, you have to have these discussions. So there's not a morbid, but when I pass away, or when she passed away, if I passed away first, she said, "What are you gonna do?" And the days of being cremated, nobody thought of it. Now, people. I said, I want to be cremated, and I said, I want you to spread my ashes on downtown Youngstown, Center Square. She looked at me. I said, that's what I want. I said, because I tell people so that I am what I am because I was born by two. I was born by my mother, and I was born by my city. My city born me and raised me as much as my mother and father did. So everything I am, and I've said this everything I've ever been, everything I am, everything I ever will be, because of my family, because of my city. So that's why.
Yes, and that's thank you. I I could retire from podcasting today. I really feel like, yes, I really appreciate you talking to me. Like, this has motivated me. You know, and I just want to do my part in bringing, you know,
well, you are
Youngstown in a good way. And
you are. You're doing this podcast. You're doing this podcast. And you're doing a wonderful job. Wonderful job. The fact that you had somebody from Denver, Colorado as your partner, that says something. That says something. It ain't somebody down the street. It ain't somebody down the street in Poland or somebody down the street in Struthers. You got somebody across the country. So somebody who believes in you, taking a shot on you with you, taking a ride with you. That's all you want. Take the ride with me. Let's see where it goes.
Because you know what? There's a lot in Youngstown. There's a lot, and there's a market there for it. We have so many stories to tell. You know, we have so many stories to tell.
And when I came back 10 years ago, I came back. People said, "Why'd you come back?" I said, "To make it an entertainment destination," and I'm going to do that. But people in 10 years, people go, "What's going on?" 10 years, I go, "It's called show business for a reason. Business comes on for the show. You got to take care of the business aspects." You know, I tell people, anybody come and shoot a movie, it's been done. Where's it going to be seen? My films. When I went to back, I've developed a partnership with a distribution company. Who the gentleman used to work, be the head of distribution for MGM. Then he went to then he was to MGM. Then he was at the Miramax, which is the greatest independent company ever. Then he went to Weinstein Company when they sold. Then he went to A24, which is the greatest distributor now. Every movie has A24 to his own. So now COVID hurt a lot of businesses. We know that. The two businesses that actually help are the mom and pop takeout stores, restaurants, takeout restaurants that didn't depend on indoor dining. They didn't only survive; they thrived. And independent film, and we'll do a lot of independent film in Youngstown now. But the question is, where's the movie going to be seen? I can tell you where my stuff's going to be seen when it gets done. So I tell them, we kind of went the back door. Now we're revving up, getting financing for our projects, because we know they'll be seen, where they're going to be seen. And we'll tell how many theaters are going to be seen, what theaters, because now COVID likes to change the game. For independent film, it may help independent film tremendously. Now you don't need this. The theater chains came to the filmmakers like myself and said, we need content. We cut out the middle. We need content. It was so I was when I did it, I was a part of I helped produce a little horror project in 2020. We had 50 theaters around the country. One of them was up here in Borden. We had the Regal Theater in Borden. We broadcast for 2 weeks. So this is what we're looking to do. We want to make Youngstown not only a production destination, but a destination for people people coming to lowest cost of living, right? Anywhere in the country. And we can give you everything and anything you need. Great place to raise children, good school systems, great place to go to college. So the town's on the upswing, town's on the climb again, and I wanted to be part of it.
I cannot wait to see what's going to happen with people like you leading it. I know it, the story. Like I said, the story of Youngston, it's just so. You couldn't believe it. You wouldn't believe it, right?
Right, needs to be told.
To have these successes like yourself,
thank you.
You know, to come on the same streets that I did, and I think we have a different characteristic. You know, I think we had that little half Cleveland, half Pittsburgh thing in us too. You know, but I love it, and I just appreciate. Thank you so much. And
my pleasure.
Anything that I can do to help bring anything to Youngstown, I'm here. Like, let's.
I appreciate that.
Sorry, I want to talk about the boom boom. Hold on 1 second. I want to add this to this. Oh, wait.
Look at that picture, boy.
I know.
People said, "You remember him?" I said, "Yeah, I ain't seen him in a while, though."
I had a thing for your bourbon. Where can we buy your bourbon? Your bourbon.
Boom Boom Bourbon. Yeah, you have it on the bottom of the screen on the right hand. Lower right hand. Lower
Yes.
right hand screen. I see Boom Boom Bourbon.
Okay. I don't know why the theme won't come on here. Lysandra made a cool theme for it. But can we buy it anywhere?
Well, Giant Eagle stores, all the Giant Eagle stores. The Sammy Quick Stop at Eastern Western Reserve at 5 points. Sammy Quick Stop, ANC downtown, Chalet. So all the state stores. You can get Boom Boom Bourbon, and also my wine is Southpaw. My Southpaw red blend.
I love wine.
I've had my. Hey, Mikey Alberini sells more of my wine than anybody around. Yeah, it's easy drinking, not sophisticated. It's easy drinking red blend. It's 100% Napa grapes, 100% bottled and blended in Lodi, California, and we got it here.
Wait. Oh, here I go. There you go.
And if you want to inquire about the bourbon, please, there's the website, boomboombourbon.com.
Do you still have the Mancini Foundation?
Yes, we just did a couple events. That's right. Johnny Russo was here for my foundation, and we had the fight night. So now, every January, we had the first one. We're going to hopefully make an annual event. We did it January 24th. Next year is January 23rd, the fourth Friday of the month. We're going to do a fight night. I brought in Larry Holmes, Buster Douglas, Michael Spinks. Kelly was there. Next year, we're going to have more fighters. And it's a fight. Last year, we did fight night for veterans the past January. Next year is going to be fight night for first responders.
I want to help. I want to be part of that, getting the word out.
Please, I appreciate it. I will actually call upon you. I'll call upon
you. And your book, The Good Son. You know what? I tried to stream this. I watched it, and I couldn't find it to stream it anywhere.
What's that?
Your movie, The Good Son.
Oh, no.
I tried to stream it online.
I think Amazon.com. Amazon, I think Hulu has it. Or you go to YouTube. YouTube has it.
Okay.
You can hit it on YouTube and watch the whole thing. So the Good Son, yeah.
All right. Well, again, thank you so much.
Thank you. Appreciate it. If I see you out, say hello. If I see you somewhere out, say hello.
Oh, I will. I hope to see you again and do something in the future.
Great. I look forward to it.
Bye. Thank you so much. 1 second.
That's a wrap. That's a wrap.
I appreciate